high-end, exotic, supercars, whatever you want to call them, they are an expensive proposition. And when you go into them completely blind, you might end up spending a lot more money than you bargained for. And if you're buying an exotic car, you're probably not getting a bargain in the first place. So with that in mind, here are 5 things that I wish I knew before buying an exotic car. The number one thing that stops everybody from buying an exotic car is the price. Everyone is concerned about how much they pay for the car versus how much it's going to be worth the second that they drive it off the lot, which is why before buying any kind of high-end car, you really need to do your research on market value. Is that a horse? It is. The first thing that you need to understand is that exotic cars in general are not a good investment. If you don't have the money to spend, or you think that you're going to pay $200,000 for a car and then sell it for the same amount of money 3 years later, that is typically not what's going to happen. Which is where doing your own research comes into play, because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a dealership for whatever brand it might be, and the guy working at the dealer trying to sell me this super expensive car is telling me that I can drive it around for 2 years and it's only going to depreciate $20,000, which in an ideal situation, that would be fantastic. Unfortunately, the reality is that really doesn't happen. Unless it's some special edition Ferrari, which you're probably not going to be able to buy for your first exotic car anyways, you have to understand that whatever you're buying is going to depreciate likely a significant amount, especially if it's brand new. Which is why if you are planning on buying your first exotic car, buying used rather than new is definitely the way to go. As an example, this 2018 AMG GTR that I'm currently driving, I did not buy brand new. I really wanted it when the car first came out, but I knew that if I dropped a ton of money on a brand new one, it would depreciate significantly after a year or two, after the hype died down on this car, because initially they were kind of hard to get. It's now basically 2.5 years later, and I bought this car with 2,400 kilometers on it, which is basically nothing, and got almost $50,000 off the original sticker price. If you're trying to avoid that initial depreciation hit, used over new is definitely the way to go. And there's so many of these exotic cars lying around with hardly any miles on them that have already done that huge chunk of depreciation. As long as you can settle for that, you're going to save yourself a ton of money. The second big mistake that a lot of people make is in regards to servicing, which I think a lot of people recognize that if you buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a McLaren or whatever it may be, that a simple oil change can cost way more than it would on a regular car like a Honda Civic or a Toyota Camry. Everybody understands that. What a lot of people don't understand is that you don't necessarily have to take your Lamborghini to the dealer to get an oil change, because guess what? If you take that car anywhere near the dealer for any form of servicing, the cost of that service is typically going to be 3 to 4 times more expensive than it needs to be. Now, I'm not saying to take your McLaren to the local oil change place, because that's not a good idea either, but definitely do your research and see what's in your area, because there is likely some kind of a shop around that deals in exotic cars, typically ones that are a little bit older, but if they're familiar with those, they're likely to be familiar with the newer stuff as well, and they're going to have all the know-how on how to do pretty much any of the servicing. As long as they know what they're doing and you're comfortable with the shop, go and scope it out before bringing your car there. You can save a significant amount of money rather than going to the dealer and basically just having them charge you whatever they want. And another concern that I know a lot of people have is if their car is still under warranty. It's a bit of a myth that if you don't take your car back to the dealer to have any servicing done, that the brand could void your warranty. That's not true at all. As long as you have records of what was done to your car at whatever shop it may be, there's really nothing they can do. But do keep in mind that if you're not taking your car to the dealer for servicing, it's still going to be a premium to service an exotic car at whatever shop you take it to. Again, you get what you pay for, so just make sure that whoever you're taking it to knows what they're doing. Expensive expensive cars have expensive paint. As an example, the Green Hell Magno paint option on this car that I'm currently driving is roughly $10,000, and because it's matte paint, you can't touch it up, you can't buff anything out. If you scratch it, it's pretty much scratched for good. The only way to fix it is to repaint the car, and getting it to match, I'm assuming, would be next to impossible. Either way, whether you're buying a new or used exotic car, especially if it's new, you need to protect the paint. PPF, which stands for paint protection film, I think is essential for any kind of exotic car and even sports cars. If you just spent all this money on a car and it's in perfect condition, the last thing that you want is a stone chip on the hood or the front bumper or the front end in general. And trust me when I say, these low cars, for whatever reason, they are magnets for stone chips. And even if you're somebody that doesn't really care about that sort of thing, trust me when I say that when you go to resell that car, the next person who's buying it from you, whether it's an individual or a dealer, they're definitely going to care about the 12 stone chips in your front bumper. The thing about PPF is that it's all about who's installing it. You have to have it done right, and to have it done right, it's typically going to cost a little bit more money. You can probably find somebody who can do it in their garage for $500, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a job well done, and it's just going to destroy the look of your car in general. A good PPF job, you're not even going to see at all, but again, you're going to pay a little bit more for it. My recommendation would be, again, to do your research. Try to find a shop, ideally, that has done a wrap or PPF on the car that you're currently looking to have done, because that tells you that they have at least a little bit of experience in doing that specific car. But again, these wrap shops, they're all on social media. You can get a good idea of the work that they've done in the past, and that alone should give you a pretty good idea of what is a good wrap shop and what is a terrible one. And trust me when I say there are plenty of terrible ones out there. And as far as how much of the car you should have covered in PPF, that is totally up to you. My personal recommendation for almost any car would be the full front end, which is the front bumper, the hood, as well as the front fenders. But every car is a little bit different. Some places on certain cars are more susceptible to stone chips and potential damage. You might want to get PPF on those spots as well. Sometimes the mirrors are something that you want to do. Some people like to do the roof as well. If you want to do the whole car, it's expensive, but it means that your car is fully protected. That's kind of an ideal situation, but I guess it's what your budget allows for. But for me, at least the front end is the part that you want to cover up. Speaking of protecting the paint, if you have a nice car, you probably want to keep it clean. But please, for the love of God, do not take your car to a gas station car wash. Exotic car or not, if you're looking to destroy the paint on your car, that is the best and cheapest way to do it. Even the touchless car washes out there, while those seem like they might not do any harm, one, they don't actually do a good job of cleaning your car, and two, because they are touchless, in order for that to even be effective, they have to use very harsh chemicals to break down whatever is sitting on the surface of the paint. Unfortunately, those harsh chemicals also do their part in removing the clear coat and just damaging the paint in general, which is something that ideally I would think you want to avoid. It's obviously not the most technical explanation, but you get what I mean. And even those car washes where you drive in and clean the car yourself, if you take that brush that sits in there and washes 100 cars a day and you scrub down your exotic car with that, you might as well just take your shoe off and dip that in some soap and wipe your car down, because it's the same thing. What I would personally recommend is, one, do a little bit of research on your own and actually learn how to wash the car yourself. I think having this information, even if you never plan on washing the car yourself, is very valuable, because even if you want to do some subtle detailing on little spots on the car, you have a much better idea of how to clean your car off without damaging the paint. There's tons of great YouTube videos out there and guys that really know what they're talking about in regards to this kind of thing. And then the second thing I would advise, especially if you don't want to clean the car yourself, is find a detailer who really knows what they're doing and have them wash your car for you. Again, like anything, if you find somebody that really knows what they're doing, it's typically going to cost a little bit more money, but you know you're getting a job well done, and you also know that they're not damaging the paint on your car, because having the paint fixed is not only going to devalue your car, it's also going to be even more expensive than just having it washed properly in the first place. Depending on how much you want to spend, looking into ceramic coatings also wouldn't be a bad idea. I've had a couple ceramic coatings on a few cars that I own. Currently, my Alfa Romeo 4C is ceramic coated, and trust me when I say, when it's done properly, it makes a huge difference. You don't have to worry about the paint, and it's also a lot easier to clean your car after the fact. Which brings us to the final piece of advice that I'll give in regards to buying an exotic car, and that is modifications. And that is that modifications do not add any value to your car. In fact, I would say 99% of the time, they actually depreciate it even more. And the modification scene is going to be a little bit different for every car. As an example, an R35 GTR, you're going to be hard pressed to find one driving around completely stock. How do I know this? Because it's really the first high-end car that I ever had, and I dumped a ton of money in aftermarket parts before selling the car. And guess how much of that money I got back when I sold the car? None of it. I don't care what car it is, if you are putting on aftermarket parts, when you go to sell it with those aftermarket parts, you are not adding any value whatsoever. If anything, when you go to sell that car, the dealer is going to offer you less because of the fact that it's modified. And that might seem like it doesn't make a lot of sense, because typically if you're buying aftermarket parts for your high-end car, those aftermarket parts are going to be really expensive and really good quality, but there's also a lot less track record on those aftermarket parts. When you go to a dealer and you're selling them a bone stock car, they know exactly what they're getting into because all of those parts have somewhat of a track record. But with aftermarket parts, it's a question of long-term quality. It's a question of who did the install, how good the work is. There's just a lot of unknown variables, which kind of ups the risk on a high dollar car like that, which is why the modifications typically take away value rather than add value. My recommendation when it comes to modifying your car is try to stick to bolt-on parts, meaning things that you can put on your car, enjoy them, but then when it comes time to resell your car, you can take them off and put the stock parts back on, reverting the car back to stock. So things like wheels, an exhaust, basically any part where you're removing the stock piece off your car and replacing with an aftermarket one, as long as you have that stock piece and can put it back on the car when you go to resell it, trust me when I say you're going to do a lot better when it comes to the resale value of your car. And then after the fact, you'll still have your aftermarket parts that you can sell in the secondhand market and make some of the money back. As far as more significant modifications are concerned, like body kits or huge power upgrades, when you're making significant non-reversible modifications to your car, trust me when I say you are not going to get any of that money back when you go to resell it. So just realize that once you go down that line, there is no turning back. Also, just a little extra piece of advice, if you are getting a modification installed on your car, just like servicing, make sure that you do your research and you bring it to a shop that actually knows what they're doing. Because if you bring a high-end car with an aftermarket exhaust to any shop, they're going to tell you that they're going to be able to do it, but whether or not they're going to do it properly or not mess up your car in the process is something that you don't really know. So again, pay a little bit more, bring it to somebody that knows what they're doing, and you can ensure that you're going to have a job well done. There's definitely a lot more that I could talk about in regards to things that I wish I knew before buying an exotic car, and maybe I can cover those in future videos, but I think what I talked about in this one are kind of the basics of what you should know in order to spend as little money as possible in what is your money pit of an exotic car. Anyways, guys, that's it for me in this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to support it with a like. That helps me out a lot. And if you're not subscribed to the Car Problems channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
You